The summer sun hung low over Portland, casting warm hues across the waterfront park. Laughter and music filled the air, a vibrant backdrop to the local festival that had drawn crowds from every corner of the city. I stood at the edge of it all, surrounded by families and couples enjoying the festivities. Yet, amidst the revelry, a sense of loneliness washed over me like an unexpected tide. My husband was away on business, leaving me to navigate this bustling scene alone. He had been gone more often lately, lost in meetings and work trips that seemed to stretch endlessly. I had settled into a routine, one that felt increasingly monotonous. The days blurred into each other, punctuated only by mundane tasks and quiet dinners in front of the television. As I walked through the park, I felt a yearning for something more than my unfulfilling marriage. The festival was alive with color. Stalls selling handmade crafts lined the pathways, while food trucks offered everything from gourmet tacos to artisanal ice cream. I wandered past a booth showcasing local art, stopping briefly to admire a painting of Mount Hood at sunset. The artist spoke passionately about his work, but his words faded into background noise as my thoughts drifted elsewhere. A sharp laugh drew my attention back to the crowd. A group of younger people passed by, their energy infectious. One of them caught my eye, a young man with tousled hair and an easy smile that lit up his face. He stood out among his friends, exuding a charm that seemed effortless. Our eyes met for just a moment before he turned back to his companions, but something about that brief connection lingered in my mind. I continued walking through the festival, feeling an inexplicable pull toward him despite our age difference. My heart raced as I considered how absurd it was to feel this way at my age. Thoughts of my husband crept in. The long hours spent apart and conversations reduced to logistics made me question what we had become. As I approached a nearby beer garden tucked under strings of twinkling lights, I spotted him again sitting at a table with friends. They were animatedly discussing something while sipping craft beers from local breweries. A wave of longing swept over me as I watched him laugh freely, completely unaware of my gaze. "Hey! You should join us," one of his friends called out suddenly, gesturing toward me with an inviting grin. I hesitated for just a moment before making my way over, driven by curiosity and an urge for connection that had been dormant for far too long. As I approached their table, he looked up again, this time our eyes locked longer than before. "Hi there," he said casually as I took a seat across from him. "Hi," I replied softly, feeling slightly out of place yet exhilarated by this unexpected turn. "What brings you here?" he asked, tilting his head slightly in genuine interest. "I needed some fresh air," I admitted with a small smile. "And maybe some excitement." "Good choice," he chuckled lightly before turning back to his friends. The conversation flowed naturally around us as laughter erupted intermittently between them. I found myself drawn into their banter, my worries about age and commitment slipping away with each passing moment. It felt refreshing to be seen as someone who could share in their joy rather than merely existing in someone else's shadow. As dusk began its descent on the festival grounds, casting shadows across our table, he leaned closer to me without hesitation, a gesture so simple yet charged with unspoken possibilities. "You have good energy," he remarked casually but with an intensity that made my heart race unexpectedly. "Thank you," I replied quietly as warmth spread through me at his compliment. We exchanged stories about our lives, his youthful ambitions contrasting sharply with my own experiences shaped by years of routine and responsibility. Each word sparked something within me. It was as if layers were peeling away from who I thought I was supposed to be. Yet even amidst this budding connection came whispers of guilt, a nagging reminder that my husband was miles away while I sat here sharing laughter with someone much younger than myself. Would this fleeting moment lead anywhere meaningful? Or would it simply deepen the chasm between what was expected and what was desired? As night fell over Portland and stars began to twinkle above us like distant dreams waiting to be realized, something shifted in our conversation, a deeper understanding forming between us without any need for explicit words or gestures. "I'm glad you came over," he said softly after another round of laughter subsided among his friends. "Me too," I responded sincerely. It felt like we both understood there was more happening beneath the surface, an unspoken connection weaving its way through our dialogue like threads binding us together despite everything else pulling us apart. But reality loomed large, the weight of choices made long ago pressed down heavily upon me even amid laughter shared under twinkling lights. My heart raced not only from excitement but also fear. What would happen when tomorrow dawned? Would this fleeting encounter dissolve into nothingness or ignite something irrevocable? With each lingering glance exchanged between us came questions unanswered, an invitation perhaps toward paths unexplored yet fraught with risk and uncertainty ahead. The laughter of the festival faded into the background as I stood there, heart pounding in my chest. The vibrant colors of the stalls blurred together, and the sense of fried food and sweet treats filled the air. Yet, all I could focus on was him, his easy smile, those bright eyes that seemed to see right through me. In that moment, a thrill surged within me, mingling with a sense of guilt that gnawed at my insides. I had spent years building a life defined by predictability. My days revolved around routines, work, home, family obligations. Yet here I was, on the brink of something new and dangerously exhilarating. The festival's music played softly in the background as we exchanged glances filled with unspoken words. Each look deepened my internal struggle. Could I really step outside my carefully constructed life? "Have you tried the churros?" he asked suddenly, breaking the silence between us. "No," I replied, almost shyly. "Let's get some," he said, his enthusiasm infectious. I nodded, allowing him to lead me through the crowd toward a stall adorned with colorful lights. As we waited in line, our shoulders brushed against each other, a small contact that sent an unexpected jolt through me. The world around us faded as our eyes locked for what felt like an eternity. "Here you go," he said as he handed me a chow dusted with sugar and cinnamon. "Best in town." "Thanks," I replied, taking a tentative bite. The sweetness melted on my tongue, but it was nothing compared to the sweetness of his gaze. With each passing moment at the festival, I felt myself slipping further away from reality and deeper into this connection we were forging. The laughter around us became background noise as we shared stories about our lives, his carefree youth against my more measured experiences. He spoke about his travels and dreams with such passion that it ignited something within me, a longing for adventure long buried beneath years of domesticity. But guilt lingered at the edges of my mind like a shadow I couldn't shake off. My husband was away on business. This felt like betrayal even if it was just innocent flirtation, or so I tried to convince myself. As we wandered through the festival grounds, we found ourselves drawn to a quieter corner away from the throngs of people. The soft glow of fairy lights created an intimate atmosphere where laughter turned into something deeper, something charged with unacknowledged desire. "I don't usually do this," he confessed suddenly, his voice barely above a whisper. "What do you mean?" I asked, curiosity piqued despite my better judgment. "This, being here with you." His gaze held mine steadily as if searching for understanding or perhaps permission. My heart raced at his admission. It mirrored my own feelings in ways I hadn't yet articulated to myself. "Me neither," I admitted softly. In that moment of vulnerability between us, everything shifted, the air thickened with unspoken possibilities. It was as if time stood still while we hovered on the brink of something monumental yet terrifyingly real. Then it happened, we kissed. A gentle collision of lips that sent shockwaves through me, awakening desires long dormant. It was electrifying yet terrifying all at once. Part of me wanted to pull away while another part craved more. The kiss broke just as quickly as it began. Both of us pulled back slightly in shock at what had transpired between us, a fleeting moment that felt significant yet fraught with consequences too heavy to bear fully in that instant. "I shouldn't have done that," he murmured softly after what felt like an eternity filled with uncertainty. No, I replied almost instinctively before pausing to collect my thoughts. But it happened. His expression shifted from surprise to understanding. We both knew this wasn't just harmless fun anymore. It had crossed an invisible line into dangerous territory. I should go, he said finally after a long silence stretched between us like an unbridgeable chasm filled with doubt and regret. Wait, I said impulsively before realizing how desperate it sounded even to my own ears. He turned back toward me slowly. Uncertainty flickered in his eyes as if weighing options that could change everything for both of us. I don't want this night to end, I admitted quietly before adding more confidently, not yet. He hesitated but then stepped closer again, this time not shying away from closing distance between us completely until our bodies were nearly touching once more under those twinkling lights illuminating everything around us except for clarity about what lay ahead. As laughter echoed from nearby festivities mingled with music drifting through warm summer air outside our secluded bubble created by whispered secrets shared only moments ago, it felt impossible not to succumb entirely once again despite knowing full well where such choices might lead down paths previously unimagined. Yet how could one resist when faced with such raw connection? When temptation beckoned louder than reason? We spent hours wandering through stalls filled with trinkets and treasures far less important than what had sparked between us earlier, the thrill lingering like an aftertaste long after indulging in something forbidden but impossible not to crave further still. As night deepened around us cloaked in shades darker than before, a sense settled over everything, anticipation mixed heavily alongside fear regarding tomorrow's inevitable return toward reality waiting just beyond this fleeting escape from ordinary life. Eventually, though reality would come crashing back down upon both our heads, we knew this moment couldn't last forever despite wanting desperately for time itself somehow bend its will allowing indulgence without consequence. When finally saying goodbye came upon us, a sense hung heavily over everything spoken aloud or left unsaid lingering like ghosts haunting memories yet untouched. See you again? He asked tentatively holding on to hope while uncertainty danced behind every word spoken aloud amidst shadows cast by streetlights flickering overhead illuminating paths leading nowhere specific but promising nonetheless adventure ahead waiting patiently, somewhere beyond tonight. I don't know, my voice trailed off uncertainly because deep down inside clarity eluded me entirely even now when faced directly confronting choices made tonight. As he walked away slowly disappearing into darkness receding further until only silence remained where laughter once thrived, I realized how deeply intertwined our fates had become already despite knowing full well consequences awaited should anyone discover secrets kept hidden beneath layers carefully crafted throughout years spent building lives defined by stability rather than spontaneity. The night air was thick with unspoken words as I turned away from the festival lights, feeling the weight of the moment settle heavily on my chest. The laughter and music faded into a distant hum, leaving behind a silence that felt almost suffocating. I walked slowly, each step echoing the uncertainty swirling in my mind. What had I done? The kiss lingered on my lips, a reminder of both exhilaration and dread. I found myself wandering along the waterfront, where the shimmering reflections danced on the water's surface. Couples strolled by, hand in hand, lost in their own worlds. I envied their ease, their comfort with one another. My own life felt like a carefully constructed facade, now cracking at the edges. The thrill of connection I had experienced earlier gnawed at me, pulling me in conflicting directions. As I approached a small cafe overlooking the river, I hesitated outside its warm glow. Inside, familiar faces chatted over drinks. It was a gathering of friends and acquaintances from my past. They were oblivious to my turmoil. I stepped inside and ordered a glass of wine to steady my nerves. As I sipped slowly, my thoughts drifted back to him, the young guest whose presence had ignited something dormant within me. "Are you all right?" A voice pulled me from my reverie. It was an old acquaintance, someone who had always been kind to me but whose attention felt too probing at that moment. Just thinking, I replied with a forced smile. About what? You seem far away. Just life, I shrugged, not wanting to delve deeper into complexities that even I couldn't articulate. He nodded knowingly and returned to his conversation with others nearby. But his question lingered in my mind like an echo. What was this all about? Was it worth risking everything for a fleeting connection? The guilt settled back in like an unwelcome guest. Later that evening, as I returned home to an empty house, the silence enveloped me again. My husband was still away on business, a routine trip that had become all too familiar. There were no comforting sounds of his presence or shared moments to ground me, only shadows filled the rooms we once shared so intimately. I sat on the edge of our bed, staring at the untouched side where he usually slept. Memories flooded back, laughing over dinner conversations or quiet evenings spent reading together, moments that felt increasingly distant now. Hadn't we promised each other more than this monotony? Yet here I was, contemplating choices that could shatter what little stability remained. The phone rang suddenly, jarring me from my thoughts. It was him, my husband, checking in after a long day of meetings. "Hey there," he said cheerily. "Hi," I replied softly. "How's everything?" "Fine," I managed to say without revealing too much beneath the surface. "I'll be home tomorrow evening," he continued casually. "Can't wait to see you." I forced a smile even though he couldn't see it through the phone line. "Looking forward to it." After hanging up, unease washed over me again as memories of our last conversation replayed in my mind, the promises made and forgotten amidst daily routines and unspoken frustrations. The next day dragged on painfully slow until evening arrived at last, a welcome distraction from my spiraling thoughts. As twilight descended upon Portland's vibrant streets, I found myself drawn back toward familiar places, the cozy bar where we'd first connected amidst laughter and craft beer. When I entered, he was already there waiting, leaning casually against the bar with an easy smile that lit up his face upon seeing me arrive. We exchanged pleasantries before settling into comfortable conversation. It felt like slipping into something familiar yet thrillingly new all at once. "I didn't think you'd come back so soon," he said lightly as we shared stories about our lives beyond this momentary escape from reality. "I needed some air," I replied honestly enough for both of us without revealing too much about what weighed heavily on my heart. As we spoke more freely than before, exchanging dreams and fears, I began questioning whether this connection could fill voids in ways previously unimaginable or merely deepen existing complexities within myself already struggling under pressure from various angles. Then came another moment of vulnerability. His gaze held mine longer than necessary as if searching for answers buried deep within us both, and suddenly our lips met again with surprising urgency amid laughter fading around us. A rush of emotion surged through me, a blend of desire and doubt intertwined so tightly that it left little room for clarity between right and wrong anymore. "What are we doing?" The question slipped out before I could stop myself. Uncertainty dripped from every syllable spoken aloud between us, now hovering dangerously close together yet worlds apart still somehow. He paused before responding thoughtfully, "Maybe just figuring things out?" But how could either one of us truly decipher meaning behind such fleeting encounters when reality loomed large just outside those bar doors waiting patiently for our return? As night deepened around us, filled with stars twinkling overhead like distant promises made long ago, I sensed changes stirring within alongside growing restlessness brewing beneath this newfound connection. We spoke until closing time approached. The bar emptied around us, leaving only echoes behind as if time itself had slipped away unnoticed during moments lost together. Yet despite warmth lingering between us still, I couldn't shake off impending consequences weighing down upon shoulders already burdened by choices made without foresight. Returning home after saying goodbye felt heavier than before. Shadows danced across walls illuminated by streetlights filtering through curtains drawn tightly shut against prying eyes outside world beyond. Once again alone within these four walls, I faced truths hidden beneath layers built over years spent balancing expectations against desires long suppressed since childhood. And as sleep eluded me later that night, I began questioning everything anew. What did this mean for tomorrow? Would we continue down this path, or would reality crash down upon us like waves breaking against rocky shores, threatening to pull under those who dared venture too close? In moments suspended between breaths taken quietly alone, I pondered how far one might go chasing fleeting connections while risking everything else left behind, wondering if perhaps true freedom lay somewhere hidden beyond boundaries defined by fear itself. The phone rang, slicing through the stillness of the night, a jarring reminder of reality. I glanced at the screen, my heart sinking as I recognized the name. The voice on the other end was familiar yet distant, carrying with it the weight of expectations and obligations that had become all too routine. "Hey, are you awake?" my husband's voice came through, slightly muffled. "Yeah," I replied, forcing a calmness I didn't feel. "Just couldn't sleep." "Everything okay?" he asked, concern lacing his tone. "Just thinking," I said, glancing at the young man beside me still lost in slumber. The contrast between our worlds felt stark, one filled with responsibilities and the other brimming with uncharted possibilities. "I'll be home tomorrow afternoon," he continued. "We can talk then." "Sure," I responded, my mind racing with thoughts of what talking would entail. Would he sense the shift in me? The way my heart raced for someone else? "I miss you," he added softly. "I miss you too," I lied, feeling a pang of guilt wash over me as I hung up the call. The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken words. My gaze drifted to the young man beside me, his presence igniting a fire within that felt both exhilarating and terrifying. We spent the night together without any plans for the future, lost in conversations that flowed like the craft beers we sipped earlier at that cozy downtown bar. Each moment felt like a stolen treasure, laughter mingled with vulnerability as we shared stories about our lives. His ambitions and dreams contrasted sharply against my own long-standing routines. But as dawn approached, reality began to seep back in. The sun would rise soon enough, bringing clarity along with its light, a reminder of my commitments waiting just outside this momentary escape. "What time is it?" he murmured sleepily as I shifted beside him. "Early," I replied, reluctant to break this fragile bubble we had created together. He smiled softly and reached out to touch my hand. "I didn't think you'd be so adventurous." Adventure was hardly how I'd describe this affair. It felt more like walking a tightrope stretched between desire and duty, a balancing act teetering precariously close to falling into chaos. "I guess sometimes you just need to break free from routine," I said quietly. He nodded but didn't respond immediately. Instead, his gaze drifted toward the window where dawn began to paint the sky in shades of orange and pink, a beautiful sight that felt bittersweet against our secretive backdrop. As moments passed in comfortable silence, unease crept back into my thoughts. What would happen when we returned to our respective realities? Would this fleeting connection dissolve like mist under sunlight? Or would it cling stubbornly to my heart? His voice broke through my spiraling thoughts once more. "What happens next?" A question laden with implications hung heavily between us, as if daring me to confront everything lurking beneath our shared laughter and whispered secrets. "I don't know," I admitted finally, feeling exposed under his gaze which held both curiosity and concern. He sat up slightly, running a hand through his tousled hair, an endearing gesture that made me smile despite myself. "Maybe we should talk about it now?" I hesitated. Discussing what lay ahead felt daunting, like peering over an edge into an abyss filled with uncertainty. "Can't we just enjoy this moment for now?" "Sure," he replied easily, but there was an edge of disappointment in his voice that made me wonder if he truly understood what was at stake here. As daylight spilled into the room illuminating our faces, shadows from my life danced around us, a reminder of all that awaited beyond these four walls. Unanswered questions about love and loyalty intertwined with fear of loss and longing for something more vibrant than what had become ordinary. Suddenly aware of time slipping away from us like grains of sand through fingers, I knew we couldn't linger forever in this sanctuary built on secrecy alone. I should get going soon, I said reluctantly as I swung my legs off the bed while trying not to disturb him too much. Okay, his tone was hesitant but understanding. Perhaps he too sensed how fragile this moment was becoming, how quickly it could vanish if not handled delicately. I dressed quietly while stealing glances at him, memories flashing through my mind, laughter shared over drinks at festivals under twinkling lights, lingering gazes across crowded rooms filled with music and life, kisses stolen away from prying eyes amidst hushed whispers echoing desires unfulfilled yet intoxicatingly real. And then there was reality, the looming presence of commitments waiting for me outside these walls, the husband who would return home expecting normalcy while remaining blissfully unaware of everything shifting beneath our surface. As I gathered my things together, the weight of impending decisions settled heavily upon me. I wondered how much longer we could sustain this delicate dance without consequences crashing down around us like waves against rocks eroding their foundations slowly but surely. With one last glance back at him before stepping out into daylight, I took a deep breath, steeling myself against whatever awaited beyond those doors, uncertainty mixed with exhilaration tinged by fear, a cocktail so familiar yet foreign all at once. Would today be another day cloaked in secrets, or would it finally force clarity upon choices left unmade? The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows as I navigated the familiar streets of Portland. The festival was still alive with laughter and music, but I felt detached, as if I were watching from a distance. My thoughts spiraled around the guests' impending departure. Each moment spent together felt like grains of sand slipping through an hourglass, and I couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. As I approached the bar where we often met, a wave of anxiety washed over me. This place had become our refuge, a cocoon where reality blurred. The dim lighting offered anonymity, but now it felt stifling. What would happen when he left? Would our connection dissolve like mist in sunlight? I entered the bar, scanning for him among the scattered patrons. There he was, leaning against the counter, a familiar smile breaking across his face as our eyes met. For a fleeting second, the weight of my secrets lifted. Here was someone who made me feel seen. "Hey," he said casually, though I could sense an underlying tension in his voice. "You look deep in thought." "Just thinking about everything," I replied, taking a seat beside him. The bartender approached with a knowing nod. It was clear we were regulars here. "Everything?" He raised an eyebrow, leaning closer as if to draw me into his world. "Life, choices, you know how it is," I said lightly, trying to mask the gravity of my words. He studied me for a moment before nodding slowly. "Yeah, life can get complicated." I took a sip of my drink to buy time while my heart raced with conflicting emotions. The thrill of being together clashed with the gnawing guilt that had become my constant companion. How could something so exhilarating feel so wrong? "I have some news," he said suddenly, his expression shifting to one of seriousness. "What kind of news?" I asked cautiously. "I'm leaving town soon, next week actually." His words hung in the air between us like an uninvited guest. My stomach dropped at his announcement. "Soon?" He nodded solemnly. "Yeah, work obligations and all that." The implications were clear. Our secret world would be shattered soon enough. A part of me wanted to scream at him for bringing this up now when everything felt so fragile. Another part wanted to cling desperately to what we had left. "I didn't realize it was so soon," I managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. "Neither did I," he replied softly. "But it's not like we can change that." I looked away from him and focused on the condensation forming on my glass. The reality of our situation pressed down on me like an anchor pulling me into deep water. Just then, the door swung open with an enthusiastic jingle as my husband stepped inside. His presence jolted through me like electricity. He spotted us immediately and walked over with an easy smile that belied any tension between us. "Hey! Fancy running into you here," he exclaimed, oblivious to the storm brewing beneath our surface interactions. "Just catching up," I said too quickly as panic surged within me. The guest shifted uncomfortably beside me while my husband continued chatting about his day at work. The mundane details felt like knives cutting through our fragile moment together. My heart raced as I tried to maintain composure amid this unexpected intrusion. "I didn't expect you back so soon," I said lightly while stealing glances at my companion's expression. A mix of surprise and concern flickered across his face. "I wrapped up early," he replied nonchalantly before turning back toward my husband with feigned enthusiasm. "How's your week been?" As they exchanged pleasantries, anxiety knotted in my stomach. Every laugh shared between them felt like salt on an open wound, a reminder that this double life was becoming increasingly difficult to manage. Eventually, after what felt like hours but was probably only minutes later, my husband excused himself to grab another drink from the bar, leaving us alone once more. "I didn't expect him today," I whispered urgently once he was out of earshot. "Me neither." He leaned closer again. There was urgency in his voice now that mirrored my own fears. "What do we do?" I hesitated before answering. Uncertainty loomed large over us both, like dark clouds threatening rain at any moment. "We keep things normal, for now." He nodded slowly, but there was hesitation etched across his features. A reflection of doubt mirrored back at me through those vibrant eyes that had captivated me since our first encounter at the festival weeks ago. "What happens when I leave?" His question hung heavily between us, an unsaid acknowledgement of impending loss coloring every word spoken aloud or otherwise left unvoiced altogether. "I don't know," I admitted quietly. Vulnerability seeped into every syllable uttered under these dim lights filled with laughter just moments ago. It felt surreal how quickly joy could turn into despair when faced with reality's harsh truths lurking just beyond reach, waiting patiently for their moment to strike without warning or mercy whatsoever. My husband returned moments later with 2 drinks in hand. His presence broke whatever fragile connection had reformed moments before, leaving only uncertainty behind instead. A reminder that life would continue despite whatever choices lay ahead, waiting patiently around every corner yet unseen until they were upon us unexpectedly, forcing decisions upon those unprepared for such weighty matters. As we settled back into small talk among laughter echoing around us, I caught myself stealing glances towards him, the guest who had ignited something dormant within, a spark now threatened by outside forces beyond our control. Would there be time left before everything changed irrevocably? Or would this fleeting connection fade away quietly along with all other dreams lost amidst daily routines filled with obligations and expectations? With each passing moment spent together, I grappled silently against growing fears threatening to consume whatever light remained, illuminating paths forward into unknown territories ahead, waiting patiently beyond reach, still clouded by uncertainty, lingering just beneath surface tensions simmering away, unnoticed until they erupted unexpectedly without warning, leaving chaos behind them. As the days slipped by, the weight of our connection pressed heavier against my chest. Each encounter with the guest became a delicate dance, filled with unspoken words and tentative glances. I found myself caught in a whirlwind of emotions, oscillating between exhilaration and dread. The thrill of our secret meetings was intoxicating, yet the reality of my life loomed ominously in the background. One evening, as we sat in a dimly lit corner of a familiar bar, I noticed the tension etched across his face. The laughter and chatter around us faded into a dull hum as I leaned in closer. "What's on your mind?" I asked softly, sensing a shift in his demeanor. He hesitated before responding, his fingers tracing the rim of his glass. "I'm just thinking about what happens next," he admitted. "This can't go on forever." His words struck me like a cold splash of water. The thrill that had once enveloped us now felt like a fragile bubble ready to burst. You're right, I replied cautiously, trying to gauge his expression. But what are we really doing here? He looked away, eyes searching for something beyond the bar's wooden beams. I didn't expect to feel this way about you, he confessed quietly. But commitment? That's not something I'm ready for. A knot formed in my stomach as I absorbed his admission. Commitment was precisely what I had been grappling with all along, a concept that seemed both enticing and terrifying. My marriage was teetering on the edge of collapse. Could I really plunge into another relationship without losing myself entirely? Before I could respond, my phone buzzed on the table, a message from my husband announcing his return home earlier than planned. The timing felt almost cruel, an unwelcome reminder of my obligations that clashed violently with this burgeoning connection. I have to go, I said abruptly, standing up and grabbing my bag as if it would shield me from reality. Wait, he said urgently, reaching for my arm gently but firmly. Can we talk about this? The urgency in his voice tugged at something deep within me, but I couldn't bear to linger any longer in this limbo between two worlds. Not now, I replied tersely and stepped away from him. The night air hit me like a shockwave as I exited the bar, leaving behind unanswered questions and unresolved feelings swirling in my wake. When I arrived home, shadows danced across the living room walls. My husband's presence filled every corner with an unsettling familiarity. He was sprawled comfortably on the couch, flipping through channels aimlessly. Hey there, he greeted casually without looking up. Hi, I replied, forcing a smile that felt foreign on my lips. There was an unmistakable tension hanging between us. It wrapped around us like an unwelcome guest refusing to leave. As he continued to watch television, I busied myself with mundane tasks, pouring a glass of water and tidying up, anything to distract from the growing chasm between us. Long day, he finally asked after several moments of silence. Just tired, I said curtly while avoiding eye contact. His brow furrowed slightly before he turned off the TV and sat up straight. You seem distant lately. The words hung heavy in the air. They struck at something raw within me, a truth too difficult to confront head-on. I've just been busy, I managed to say without revealing too much. Busy or distracted? He leaned forward slightly, eyes narrowing as if searching for answers hidden beneath layers of pretense. I swallowed hard. There was no easy way out of this conversation without exposing cracks in our carefully constructed facade. Can we not do this now? You just got home. He nodded slowly but didn't look convinced. Instead, he seemed more determined than ever to peel away at my defenses. I'm just worried about you, he said quietly after a moment's pause. Worry? It felt like such an inadequate word for what lay beneath our surfaces, years of unspoken resentment and unmet expectations bubbling just below calm waters waiting for storms to break through at any moment. I appreciate it, I replied softly but couldn't shake off how hollow those words sounded even to me. As we settled into an uneasy silence again, the familiar sound of clock ticking echoed through our home. A thought crept into my mind. What would happen if everything unraveled? What if my choices led me down paths that diverged too far from who I once was? Days turned into nights filled with restless thoughts. Each moment spent apart from him felt unbearable yet necessary. An internal struggle played out against mundane routines that felt increasingly suffocating under their own weight. Then came another unexpected twist. During one late-night phone call with him while sitting alone on our porch bathed in moonlight, the guest suggested we take some time apart from each other, to breathe and reflect without pressure or expectation clouding judgment further down uncertain roads ahead, waiting patiently beyond reach, still shrouded by uncertainty lingering just beneath surface tensions simmering away unnoticed until they erupted, unexpectedly without warning, leaving chaos behind them. What do you mean? My voice trembled slightly despite efforts to maintain composure amidst turmoil brewing inside me, unrelenting against all odds stacked against clarity emerging from confusion surrounding choices made thus far along tangled paths leading nowhere concrete, yet still beckoning toward possibilities unknown, lurking just beyond horizons, stretching infinitely outward toward new beginnings, waiting patiently beyond reach, still shrouded by uncertainty, lingering just beneath surface tensions, simmering away unnoticed until they erupted unexpectedly without warning, leaving chaos behind them. I think we both need space. His voice remained calm despite storm raging within me, threatening to tear apart everything held dear thus far along tangled paths leading nowhere concrete, yet still beckoning toward possibilities unknown, lurking just beyond horizons, stretching infinitely outward toward new beginnings, waiting patiently beyond reach, still shrouded by uncertainty, lingering just beneath surface tensions, simmering away unnoticed until they erupted unexpectedly without warning, leaving chaos behind them. The suggestion hung heavily between us, a silent acknowledgement that perhaps neither of us were ready for what lay ahead together nor apart, and left me grappling desperately against fear, threatening consume whatever light remained, illuminating paths forward into unknown territories ahead, waiting patiently beyond reach, still clouded by uncertainty, lingering just beneath surface tensions, simmering away unnoticed until they erupted unexpectedly without warning, leaving chaos behind them. The weight of his suggestion lingered in the air, heavy and palpable. I stared at him, searching for some glimmer of hope or clarity in his eyes, but all I found was a reflection of my own turmoil. Space? I echoed, the word tasting foreign on my tongue. The idea felt like a chasm opening between us, threatening to swallow everything we had built in those stolen moments. Yeah, he replied softly, glancing away as if avoiding the truth that hung between us. Maybe it's best if we take a step back. His voice was steady, but the tremor of uncertainty beneath it resonated with me. I wanted to argue, to cling to what we had shared, but a part of me understood the wisdom behind his words. We were caught in a whirlwind that could lead us nowhere good. A cacophony of laughter and music drifted in from outside the hotel room, reminding me of the vibrant festival just beyond our door. The world continued to spin while we stood still, trapped in this moment of indecision. I could hear the faint sounds of people celebrating life, something that felt increasingly distant from my reality. Are you sure? I asked finally, my voice barely above a whisper. The question hung in the air like an unanswered prayer. He nodded slowly, his expression thoughtful yet pained. I just think, maybe we both need to figure things out on our own. The finality of his words struck me like a sudden gust of wind knocking over fragile glassware. My heart raced as I grappled with the implications. Taking a break meant confronting my own feelings and fears without the comfort of his presence. It meant facing the truth about my marriage and what I truly wanted moving forward. Okay, I said, forcing myself to sound resolute even as uncertainty churned within me. If that's what you think is best. His eyes softened momentarily before he turned away completely, creating an invisible barrier between us that felt insurmountable. With every passing second, it became clearer that this was not just an interlude, it marked a turning point. After he left, silence enveloped me like a heavy blanket. The walls seemed to close in as I sat alone in the dim light filtering through drawn curtains. Memories flooded back, the laughter shared over craft beers at that downtown bar, our whispered conversations filled with possibility and dreams unspoken. But now those dreams felt distant and unattainable. I wandered through the hotel room aimlessly until my phone buzzed against the nightstand. A message from an old friend I hadn't spoken to in years popped up on the screen. Hey. Just passing through Portland for a few days. Let's catch up. A sense of nostalgia washed over me as I read her words. She had always been someone who encouraged me to embrace life fully and fearlessly. Yet now? Would meeting her only serve as another reminder of what I had lost? Despite my reservations, I typed back quickly, sure. When are you free? As soon as I hit send, regret washed over me again. Was this truly what I needed? Or was it merely an escape from confronting my reality? That evening was filled with restless thoughts swirling around my mind like autumn leaves caught in a gusty wind. My husband was still away on business. he would return soon enough with questions about everything, about us, and suddenly facing him felt daunting. In moments like these, solitude becomes both a refuge and a prison. The following day arrived too quickly. Anticipation mixed with anxiety coursed through me as I prepared for lunch with my friend at one of Portland's charming cafes nestled along the waterfront park where we once strolled carefree years ago. Seeing her again brought back echoes of laughter and youthful dreams long buried under layers of routine and obligation. She looked radiant, full of life, while I felt worn down by choices made and paths taken. "How have you been?" she asked cheerfully as we settled into our seats outside under colorful umbrellas shielding us from the sun's rays. I hesitated before answering. How could one encapsulate everything that had transpired since we last met? "You know, life," was all that escaped my lips. Her gaze sharpened slightly at my evasiveness, but she let it slide for now, a knowing smile crossing her face instead. We chatted about mundane things initially, work updates and mutual friends' lives unfolding around us, but eventually she probed deeper. "You seem different," she remarked casually while stirring her coffee thoughtfully. "Is everything okay?" My heart raced again at her perceptiveness. Perhaps this wasn't just catching up after all. It felt more like peeling back layers revealing truths long hidden beneath surface tensions simmering quietly away unnoticed until now. "I'm figuring things out," was all I managed to say before diverting attention back toward her latest adventures traveling across Europe last summer, a topic guaranteed to elicit enthusiasm from both sides without touching on anything too personal or raw lingering beneath our conversation's surface. But even amidst laughter shared over stories exchanged between bites taken from delicious pastries served alongside steaming cups filled with warmth, my mind wandered back toward him, the younger guest who had stirred something deep within me only to leave me grappling with confusion now hanging heavily overhead like dark clouds threatening rain without warning. As lunch wrapped up unexpectedly fast, a rush fueled by excitement mixed with unease, I found myself torn between wanting more time together versus retreating back into familiar territory where comfort lay waiting patiently for return homeward again. Once outside under clear skies brightened by afternoon sun shining brightly down upon bustling streets filled with people enjoying their day, I paused briefly saying goodbye before watching her walk away feeling something shift inside once more. An urge rising within urging toward change beckoning beyond reach still shrouded by uncertainty lingering just beneath surface tensions simmering quietly away unnoticed until they erupted unexpectedly without warning leaving chaos behind them. I turned slowly heading toward where I'd parked earlier reflecting on choices made thus far. The path ahead remained obscured yet tantalizing possibilities danced just out of reach waiting patiently beyond grasp still cloaked behind shadows cast long ago by decisions taken without thought or care. Suddenly an unexpected message chimed through my phone interrupting thoughts racing endlessly onward. "Can we talk? Need to discuss something important." It was from him, the younger guest whose presence had ignited feelings buried deep within. And suddenly every fiber within urged against silence now looming ominously ahead threatening chaos once more. I took a deep breath, staring at the screen, my heart racing. The message felt heavy with unspoken words. I hesitated, fingers hovering over the keyboard, unsure of how to respond. The weight of the past weeks pressed down on me, a mixture of excitement and dread swirling within. "Sure. Where?" I typed back, trying to keep my tone casual. A few moments passed before he replied with a location, a familiar bar nestled in the heart of downtown Portland. It was a place we had visited during those stolen moments, where laughter mingled with the clinking of glasses and whispered conversations. As I made my way there, I couldn't shake the feeling that this meeting would change everything. The streets were alive with summer energy. People strolled by, their faces bright with joy. But I felt detached from it all, as if I were merely an observer in my own life. Upon entering the bar, I spotted him sitting at a corner table, his expression serious as he looked up to meet my gaze. The familiar flutter in my chest was quickly overshadowed by an unsettling sense of foreboding. He gestured for me to join him. "Thanks for coming," he said softly as I settled into the chair across from him. "What's going on?" My voice was steady, but inside I felt like a tightrope walker balancing precariously. He took a deep breath, running his fingers through his hair, a gesture that had become all too familiar to me over our time together. "I've been thinking about us, about everything." His eyes searched mine for understanding. "I don't want to hurt you." The air between us thickened with unspoken truths. "You're leaving soon," I reminded him gently, trying to keep my emotions in check. "Yes," he replied, nodding slowly. "And that's part of it." He paused as if weighing his next words carefully. "I think we both know this can't last." A lump formed in my throat as reality settled around us like a heavy cloak. The thrill of our connection had been intoxicating but fleeting, an escape from the mundane routine of my life that now felt painfully hollow. "I don't want to be just a chapter in your life," he continued, his voice barely above a whisper. "You deserve more than that." The truth stung, there was no denying it. My heart sank at the thought of letting go but clung desperately to hope that perhaps we could find some way forward together. "Maybe we can figure this out," I suggested hesitantly. He shook his head slowly, eyes filled with regret. "We've both been running from reality." His honesty cut deeper than any harsh words could have done. In that moment of clarity, something shifted within me, a resolve began to form amidst the chaos swirling around us. "So what do we do now?" I asked quietly. His gaze softened as he leaned closer across the table. "I think we should end things before they get more complicated." The finality of his words hung heavy in the air between us like an uninvited guest at a party long past its prime. There was no anger or bitterness, just an overwhelming sense of loss and acceptance mingling together. "I understand," I replied softly, though inside I felt like crumbling into pieces. We spent the next few minutes talking about lighter topics, memories shared and laughter shared, but beneath it all lay an undeniable sadness threading through our conversation like an unbroken chain linking us together even as we prepared to part ways. Eventually, we stood up from the table and faced each other one last time under dim lighting cast by vintage bulbs hanging overhead, their warmth contrasting sharply against the chill creeping into my chest. "I'll always remember this," he said softly before leaning in for one final embrace, an act filled with tenderness and melancholy rather than passion or urgency. As we stepped away from each other for what felt like the last time, reality crashed down upon me once again, the weight of choices made pressing heavily on my shoulders as I walked away from him toward an uncertain future filled with shadows and echoes of what once was. Later that evening at home alone in silence broken only by distant sounds outside, a car passing by or laughter drifting through open windows, I sat on the couch contemplating everything that had transpired over these last few weeks. Moments filled with joy intertwined seamlessly alongside feelings of guilt bubbling just beneath surface tension ready to erupt at any moment if given half a chance. My husband would be returning soon. His absence had allowed space for these newfound emotions to flourish unchecked but now threatened to suffocate me instead under their weighty expectations looming ever closer on horizon ahead like storm clouds gathering ominously overhead readying themselves for release, without warning or mercy when least expected. Just then my phone buzzed again breaking through thoughts spiraling downward into despair. It was another message from him. "Can we talk again? There's something important you need to know." A chill ran down my spine. Dread washed over me like cold water splashing against skin exposed too long under winter skies. What more could possibly happen? What else lay hidden beneath surface calm waiting patiently? With trembling hands clutching phone tightly against chest feeling heartbeat quicken once more, I realized nothing would ever be simple again.